Hello friends, today we will be modding the Royal Kludge 61. It's a bit of an unconventional mod. We will be using rocks to add weight and silicone for sound dampening. Now this board is actually really cool. It's only $50 on Amazon. It's hot swappable, it's a 60%, it's RGB, it's also USB-C compatible, and it comes with switches and keycaps. The only thing with these cheap boards though are they don't really come with any sound dampening, so they sound really hollow and they're really loud, which you'll notice in the sound test later. But I think with these cheap mods we're about to do, that we can really elevate this keyboard. Now to remove the PCB from this board, you actually start with the 4 bottom screws. The PCB and the front plate remove as one unit. So once you're done unscrewing all of those screws, the whole entire thing just kind of pops out like this. It's no wonder this keyboard is so loud. Look how empty the case is. But don't worry, we're going to fix that. If we look closely at the case, we can see kind of where the PCB will sit and how high we can put the rocks in the silicone. So the PCB sits at a taper within the case, meaning that I could really only put the rocks in the back of the case because the front of the case wouldn't have enough clearance for them. Since I was just using cheap garden soil rocks, I also had to pick out a bunch of the big ones. When placing the rocks, I tried to be really mindful of the height, comparing it to the USB-C hole and the other standoffs. I wanted to make sure to try to pack in as much weight as I could, so I even took some of the smaller rocks and put them in the front. Whoa, the rocks really did their job. This thing is heavy now. Before pouring the silicone, I put the PCB back in just to double check that none of the rocks would interfere with it. I'm really glad that I did because I did end up having to take it back out and rearrange a lot of the rocks. I ended up repeating this a few times, but I think this is a really crucial step because once you pour the silicone in and it sets and cures, there really is no moving the rocks, so you want to make sure that they don't interfere with the PCB. Now it's time to mix the silicone. I prefer using a scale because it's more accurate. This silicone mixes at a 1:1 ratio, which means that you just pour exactly the same amount of each part. I ended up doing about 100 grams total, so 50 grams each. That seemed to work well. I probably could have done a little bit less since I did have a bit left over. Now you just have to mix this solution for 5 minutes. Pouring the silicone is my favorite part. It's so satisfying. Make sure to be careful of the holes and to not pour silicone through them. If you're actually worried about that, just use a little bit of masking tape prior to pouring and tape them. I poured silicone into each section until I thought that it was just barely underneath where the PCB would sit within the case. Once the silicone is all poured, I used chopsticks to remove the rocks that would stick to the silicone since I wanted everything to sit flush and even. Once satisfied, let it cure for 12 hours. The next day, this is the finished product. This silicone isn't super hard, so it does give some flex. Now to really give this keyboard a sounding chance, I ended up giving it a tape mod. It's also really cheap and easy to do. You just take some masking tape, put a few layers of it over the PCB, cut out any screw holes or USB-C ports that you need to. Then you kind of just slap it back onto the PCB, rub it down, cut off any of the excess, and you're ready to go. Now for the moment of truth. Will this actually fit back into its case and screw down? Lucky for us, it looks like it does, so we're going to go ahead and screw this in and give you guys a sound test. This keyboard has such a nice stock to it now. It just goes to show that you don't need hundreds of dollars to have a good sounding keyboard. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to catch you in the next one. See ya!